Well, hey guys, and welcome to Coach Blake's Breakdowns. I'm going to be covering a lot of shadow team stuff, and figured I'd start this first episode by first explaining what a shadow team is, how you can build your own, and just kind of go into the basic setup. I'm only in my second year of doing my own shadow team, so I figured I'll go through the rules, show you my team, talk a little bit about it, and we'll get out of here. But let's just jump right into it. So I pulled up this template that I've used for my own shadow team, and it has all of the rules and the setup and all the different nitty gritty details that we'll get into in future episodes. But today, like I said, we're focusing on base setup, starting out and what is a shadow team. So first and foremost, a shadow team is almost like a fantasy football team that you're going to carry on, year over year over year. You're going to retain players. You're going to hope they pan out in the league. You're only allowed to build your shadow team through the draft. You're not picking up free agents. You're not redrafting every year. Like I said, you're gonna go draft by draft, follow along with the NFL draft, and you're gonna build your 53 man roster and a practice squad off these draft picks and free agents. So first, starting out, the rules are how you build the shadow team is you're gonna, depending on what year it is, you're gonna get a range of picks. So as we see here, in years 1 through 4, you're picking twice per round. So there's 7 rounds of the NFL draft. You're going to get 14 draft picks. Determining which pick you have, I like using this method. It's a dice roll. And so your first year, for your first dice roll, you're choosing picks 1 through 6. Those are your options, right? So if you roll a 1, you're going to get the first overall pick. You roll a 2, second overall pick, so on and so forth. And then for the second group, it's picks 17 through 22. So again, you roll a 1, you're going to get pick 17. So you'll have picks. So if you roll 2 1s with your 2 dice to select your picks, you're going to get the first overall pick and the 17th overall pick in your first year. Um, and then year 2, you're going to get picks 2 through 7 and 18 through 23, and then it goes down through your first 4 years, and then after your fourth year, you're done picking twice per round. You only pick once per round, and there's a lot of different ways you can determine your picks from that point moving forward, and we can get into those at the end of the video. But yeah, and then after the draft, so you're gonna roll the dice. You're gonna get your draft picks, your spots, and then what you do is you follow along with the actual NFL draft that happens in April. So you go through whatever process you'd like to use, whether it's using your favorite website or you watch film yourself and build your own big board. You're gonna get your list of players, and then you're gonna follow along with the draft. And so, say you get the third overall pick, the players that are selected first and second in the NFL draft are no longer available to you. You're not allowed to pick those players; they've already been drafted. But you can pick anyone else on your board with your third overall pick. Whoever you'd like, whether it's a quarterback, cornerback, D lineman, any player you'd like in the entire draft, you're allowed to pick with that pick, and then that player is officially off the board. Obviously, you can only draft them once. Doesn't matter if they get drafted later or however that shakes out. That player is officially off of your board, and then it just goes on. You just carry on, and I know it can be hard to follow the draft. All 3 days of the draft, every single round, keeping up with it. Personally, I follow the first 2 days, the first 3 rounds, along with the draft, and then usually I have stuff going on during day 3. So what I'll do, it's all about the honor system. It's a fun little game, but it's all about the honor system. So be as clean as you want to be. But I come back after day three's over with, and then I go through and I pull up the website and I just finish out my draft from there. And I, knock off the guys that get picked, make my selections. And what a lot of people like to do is as they make their picks, they'll post on X and say, oh, in this round with this pick, I'm selecting this player. Don't have to do that. Just more interactive, gets people involved. But yeah, that's how your first draft. That's how your first draft's going to go, and really how all 4 of your drafts are going to go. Obviously, you can decide what your team building strategy is, what positions you like to focus on, especially in the early years. We don't really have a quote unquote need. You're just able to just go through. I like picking best player available, just trying to build the best team I can while I'm getting these 14 draft picks. And then after the draft's over and you've made all your selections, you now get to and there's everyone runs their shadow team a little bit differently, but with my shadow team, I select 8 undrafted free agents. So these are guys that weren't selected in the draft but are still available. We're still coming out of college. Again, not just normal free agents, but these guys that were in the draft cycle, part of that process, but now they're not on a team. And so you're able to go, I go in and I pick 8 of those players usually just the highest 8 players remaining on my board, to be honest. Um, and I sign them to my team. And then that's how you get your 22 players in your first year, in your first 4 years. That's how it goes. And again, the only significant change in the first 4 years with the draft process is that your picks slide down a little bit. So the only time you're ever going to be able to get the first overall pick in your draft out in the first 4 years is just that first year. And then you're no longer able to get the first overall pick because again, year 2, your first pick is either going to be, between picks 2 and 7, and then 3 and 8, and then 4 and 9. So but yeah, that's how the draft goes. That's how the undrafted free agency process goes. Selecting those guys, get them on your team, and then you lay it out. And a lot of people, there's a lot of different ways you can lay it out. I want to show you guys kind of what I've done to lay out my team as we get into this episode. But yeah, I'm trying to just make sure I didn't miss anything with the draft. But I think that's pretty much it. It is that easy. Go get your guys, however you want to value those guys, and then you just add them to your team. And so this is again just kind of that template. This is how I organize my team. Again, a lot of people organize their teams in different ways, and they you can lay this out however you want to. Some people will change the scheme up because they're heavy in certain positions or they want to move certain players around. Again, this is all whatever you'd like to do. It's as detailed as you'd like it to be. I'm going to keep it simple, and as we go through episode by episode, I kind of want to give weekly updates on how my team's doing, how it looks. But I figured now, since we're, past the midpoint of the season, I can kind of give, an intro to what a shadow team is, as well as kind of an update on where my team's at and how it's looked. And so what I've been doing is I kind of keep this left section open and available. That's where I'll put all my draft classes in. So you can see I have my 2023 draft class here, my 2 picks per round, which pick it was, and then my undrafted free agents that I picked up. And then obviously their, player, school, position. Same thing in 2024. And then coming up this April, I'll slide both of these down. I'll insert the 2025 box and I'll carry on. And then, after year 4, you no longer get to select twice per round outside of, using comp picks. And that's something that is for a later episode, as I'm still trying to figure out the process I want to go through with the compensatory selections in the draft. And kind of the best way to handle that. Because you don't want to just, be picking randomly extra times and load this team. I'm trying to make this as realistic for me as I can. But yeah, so after year 4, you're only picking once per round. Determining it however you've been determining it through the first 4 seasons. Again, this is my 2nd season, so I haven't gotten to that point yet. And like I said, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But just FYI, you only get those 2 picks for the first 4 years. That you get once per round, plus whatever compensatory picks you've been awarded or you've awarded yourself. And then anyway, so this is my team. This is the guys I've selected. And then so how I'm tracking it, and then how the league that I'm a part of that's been created. It's kind of like a fantasy football league with your shadow teams. It's Shadow Team League. The way that we track kind of just player performance is using PFF grades. I know there's a lot of different opinions on PFF grades, but it's the only service that, grades every step of every player every game. So it's the best way to get it overall, same scale. How are my guys doing? So I track, obviously position, player name, what team they're on, when I got them, whether it was a UDFA or a draft pick, what year I acquired that player, and then their tier. And again, it's my 2nd year. So I have a lot of rookies on my team, and then limited information means they didn't really get enough snaps to receive they didn't get enough snaps for me to actually evaluate their play. They got limited reps, and they looked really good. That doesn't really mean they're good. That just means they performed well in limited reps. So as far as determining the snap count that, to qualify for a tier grade, PFF actually has a system. They have their all 22 fantasy football system, and they have snap minimums to qualify for a grade. And our league that I'm a part of uses those same numbers as far as, if you're able to score for that week, kind of, again, similar system. And so all of the players have different, sorry, I'm super dry, have different snap minimums. So like a quarterback, you don't really qualify unless you get 30 snaps in a game. Same with wide receivers, offensive linemen. Tight ends, you're looking at 25 snap minimum. Running backs 20, linebackers 30, safeties 30, cornerbacks 30, edge players are 25, interior defensive linemen are 20, and then kind of that 11th man, however you'd like to allocate it, whether it's a second running back, a third receiver, a second tight end. Maybe it's a third defensive lineman, a third cornerback, a third linebacker, a third safety. That stat minimum is only 20 snaps in a game because they're a rotational player. They're not, playing every single down. But so what I do is with the snap count that they generate over the course of the year, I divide that out per the number of games, and that for me qualifies them where they're able to receive a tier grade or if they, get the limited information tag. So all of these players that have tier grades they've met that snap minimum, and you can see they already have a decent amount of snaps, especially comparatively to other players on my team. I keep the rookie with the rookie tag until the end of their rookie season, obviously. And then it's just their PFF grade, on top of that. So as far as assigning the tiers, it's all based off the PFF grade. So if you have a 90 or higher grade, you're going to be considered elite. You'll get that elite tier tag for the next season. 80 to 89.9 is high quality. 70 to 79.9 is above average. 60 to 69.9 is an average player. That's just kind of based off the PFF scale. 50 to 59.9 is below average, and then a 49.9 or lower is a poor player. And then obviously rookie and then limited information. And that's kind of just the different tags you'll see in this tier column. And as you can see, sometimes the grade will be the same, sometimes it'll be better. Hopefully it's better year over year. And then you can see some of these rookies that are obviously going to get a new tier plate next year, a new tier that they're going to earn or work their way into. But yeah, I mean, it really is as simple as that. You draft your 14 guys, you get your 8 undrafted free agents, and then you throw them into your team. I mean, you can be a little skewed towards certain positions. If earlier say, I want to draft a bunch of edge players, I want to draft a few quarterbacks, take some shots, see what one sticks. Maybe you want to get a bunch of wide receivers. Maybe you want to be offensive line heavy. In my first draft, I kind of went for a more balanced approach. I was more focused on filling out my team. I wanted to get guys in spots. That way I didn't have any like holes where I was going to end up, getting to, my year 5 draft and just be like, I don't have a player in this position. I kind of wanted to fill it out my first year, spread guys across. And then in my second draft, I just went best player available. I think for pretty much every single pick, I let a couple guys slide because there's guys I'm usually higher on that, end up going lower or vice versa. But I tried to stick to best player available, especially, again, like I said, especially in free agency. I really just go with usually the top guys remaining, unless there's a guy that I really like that I want on my team that might be a little bit lower. I'll just go get that guy because there's nothing worse than being really high on a prospect and loving what he's doing and loving his film, loving his production, all of that stuff, and then not ending up with him on your team, and then you watch him, have a great career. It's great for him that there's that little bit inside you that's just like, man, that could have been my guy. I actually went with a punter this year. I was really high on Austin McNamara, and he is not on a roster right now. I actually wanted to get Torrey Taylor, didn't get Torrey Taylor because I don't believe in drafting specialists this early in a shadow team. Personally, that's something else I'd love to talk about on this channel as we move forward too, is just kind of team building strategies and how I'm addressing my team, maybe how other NFL teams should be looking at their rosters. That's the fun part for me in all of this, is really getting into the nitty gritty and be like, okay, what positions do I have that, maybe this guy's going to retire or this guy's not been productive. Maybe he's going to get cut. And so I have to look at replacing that guy because he's not been performing well. And that's kind of the fun of the exercise for me. But yeah, anyway, this is my base shadow team. This is everyone I have kind of, and again, their midseason grades through 9 games. I've updated all the PFF grades, and this is again just their total grade per PFF and their total snap count. So I guess you can see all that there. And it's funny because you'll get guys like this, like Evan Anderson has been so frustrating for me this year because when he gets his limited reps, he actually looks really good. But he's just not getting enough reps to be a contributor. But he did get signed to the 49ers 53-man roster. That was a big day for me big day for me seeing my guy make it onto the 53 of his team. He was a UDFA, I believe, that I picked up and that they picked up. Oh no, I actually ended up drafting him my last pick of the draft because I really like that guy. I probably could have let him go to be a UDFA, but yeah, then that's the fun part is kind of watching guys get snaps. I think Austin Booker is another great example where I really loved his profile. I took him in the 4th round, one of my first day 3 picks. I thought he had a really high upside, and then he kind of got in and wasn't performing obviously well enough in practice to get more reps in games. It's kind of been fun watching, through the season, watch their snap count increase. And that's one of my favorite parts of the league that I'm a part of is, you score every week. And so you're able to kind of see these guys snap count slowly increase and increase. And another great example of that is Troy Franklin. He's kind of been slowly getting an increased snap count, whether it's because of performance or injuries or a combination of both. But I think my biggest standout this year has been Jalen Coker for the Panthers. He's a rookie. Actually wasn't getting any run at all early on. And then just through, injuries and, just where that team's at right now, he started to get a lot more reps and he's actually looked really good out there on the field. Posting some really high PFF grades lately, like in the 80s. So I'm hoping he can be a big piece. It's crazy because I have 2 first-round receivers in Jackson Smith and Jigba and Malik Neighbors. But then I have Jalen Coker, who's actually been pushing for kind of that wide receiver 2 role with those guys, which is like, feels good because he's a UDFA. He's not a guy we really expect a lot out of, especially as a rookie. And he's come in and he's been a really good ball player. And then obviously, I have Bijan Robinson, who I took with my first-round pick, my very first year doing this. He's just been a nice steady piece there. But yeah, again, it's fun for me to kind of look through my team and just follow it week to week. See which players are panning out. And then, it's also a good evaluation of your draft process or my draft process for me. What positions am I good at drafting? What positions do I need to, maybe revamp my process and evaluate better or value different things, and kind of see how that translates. And so again, it can be a fun little, team management thing, kind of like a Madden where you want to just, accumulate players and then work on addressing needs as you get along, get down the road. You're just kind of building the team early on. And then as you get to that year 5, 6, 7 plus, you're just kind of managing the team, managing needs where if these players are falling off, I got to bring new players in there. Got to focus there on the draft. And then there's, I'm trying to score the most points, get the best players as I can on my team just because it's fun for me. And then I'm actually planning on, as we get some of these guys to the end of their rookie contracts, I'm planning on kind of splitting it and having 2 different shadow teams. This kind of just my base shadow team where you have these guys and they're on your team forever. There's no salary cap. You don't have to worry about contracts. They're just on your team because you drafted them, or you picked them up as a UDFA, undrafted free agent. And they're just with you forever. And then I'm going to have another team that's going to be, I'll have to stick to the NFL salary cap rules. I'll have to live and die by the contracts they get. I haven't looked too far into those rules yet, as again, I'm just in my 2nd season. But I'm excited to kind of get to that part of the journey. But it's going to be fun. I want to bring everyone along with me as I build my team, and you can, start seeing this come together. We can all enjoy the highs and lows of certain players, taking off and other players falling off, or just, maybe you draft them really high and then they just don't end up panning out. I'm excited for just the journey, and I figured I might as well bring everyone along. I love shadow teams. I could talk all day about them. So I figured I'd start this channel up and start with this episode so I can try and get more people involved. Maybe you can make your own team. Again, I'll have this template linked in the description below the video. If you'd like to check it out and copy it over and make your own team. And if you do, definitely let me know. I love seeing teams. And we're trying to build the shadow team league, the fantasy league, you can call it, that we have together. We'd love more people be part of that. It's fun seeing all the different teams and, who really knows their stuff, whose guys are panning out, who's getting lucky on picks. And it's a fun community. Just talk draft stuff, talk team building, and just celebrate together. Cause it is a little different from PFF's all 22 fantasy system where you can have the same players other teams do, because it's not necessarily you drafting against them. It's you drafting against the NFL. And so if you're able to get these guys and you value them high enough that you want to pick them for your team, they're yours. And if there's multiple players in the league that want to get that guy or need that guy, you don't want to restrict it. You want to kind of let people build their own team their own way. That's why I said everyone does it a little bit differently. This is just merely how I do mine. This isn't like the set in stone rules of how to run it, especially with the comp picks as you get further into your team building and you're getting those compensatory selections. A lot of people handle those in a lot of different ways. And like I said, I don't even know how I'm planning on handling mine yet. I told myself I wouldn't do any comp picks through my first 4 seasons purely because I'm already picking twice per round. And I don't want to be the guy that has like, 3, 4 third round picks or whatever it might be. I think 2 per round's fine. It still makes you have to pick and choose your players. You don't just get to kind of spray the board in a certain round if a lot of guys are available. I kind of like, make it a little tougher on myself because that's the fun of it for me. But yeah, this is my team. Let's just get into. I'm going to go through the entire roster, and as you can see, shouldn't take too long because not everybody's getting that much run because again these are all rookies or second year NFL guys, and so this is the first year that I chose a selected quarterback. I kind of been delaying a quarterback just because I didn't love the options. I had I think I had the 5th pick and my 6th pick in my first draft, so there wasn't a lot of great quarterback options available. I had the 5th pick this year, so I mean again the board was kind of wiped clean. There was a couple quarterbacks that I thought I could go get, but I didn't want to reach just to go reach and get a quarterback. I'd rather go get a high value player at a different position and just kind of build a better team. Get a better situation for my quarterback to come into the league and be a part of. We're going to build this team for a quarterback and then bring that quarterback. And that's something that I've always believed in. As weird as it sounds, I'd rather build a team for my quarterback, not around my quarterback. And that way, even if you don't get a great quarterback, they can be successful, even though, this team isn't necessarily getting fielded. I kind of want to live by my team building strategy. But I took 2 shots on a quarterback this year. Again, I didn't really have great options at my pick slots. So I ended up getting Michael Pratt, drafted him in the 5th round. And then Sam Hartman, I let go to go undrafted. I actually picked Evan Anderson in lieu of Sam Hartman. That's kind of what I was debating between. But yeah, I was still able to grab him. Those are my 2 quarterbacks. Michael Pratt's kind of already been bouncing around the league. I think Sam Hartman's been in and out of teams as well. But obviously not panning out yet. They're just rookies. They both were kind of in situations that were already figured out, so they didn't really have that great of an opportunity to get in there and earn a spot. So we'll see if they're able to make anything of themselves, but we'll always be eyeing a quarterback in the next draft until we find one. We'll always peek at it at that first selection. Like I said, next year, the highest available pick that I'll be able to get is the 3rd overall pick. And it's a weak quarterback class. So I'm really not planning on getting a quarterback in my 3rd draft unless somebody falls to me that I like. So we'll see how that goes. We'll talk about that as the spring comes around. That's kind of my quarterback room right now. I've always found it funny that I just don't prioritize a quarterback, even though it's one of the most valuable positions, especially in the scoring system in our league that I'll probably get into in the next episode. They're just worth a lot of points if they're playing. So, but yeah, so my quarterback room is just a couple rookies that can't seem to find their way yet. And then, like I said, I have Bijan Robinson, 1st round selection in my first ever shadow draft. Everyone knows, for the Falcons, playing pretty good ball. Looks like he's playing better than this year than he was last year. If he's able to hold on to that 90, that'd be awesome. That's really a guy that I consider a key player of this team. I'm actually looking to get a 2nd running back in this coming draft if the guy that I'd like falls to me. I'm not afraid to pick Ashton Jeanty a lot higher than a lot of people probably would, depending on where he falls on my big board coming draft day. And then Kenny McIntosh, 7th round guy, just wanted a backup running back. Again, just was filling out the roster and was like, yeah, might as well. I like McIntosh, and hasn't really landed anywhere. Been in Seattle, hasn't really run it a lot of time. As they have a really young running back room that's performing really well. So, my other 1st round pick in 2023, my first draft was Jackson Smith-Njigba. Bijan Robinson and JSN were both really highly touted draft prospects. I was super pumped to get them both on my team. I didn't think JSN would fall that far. I was excited to grab him. He's been up and down. Hasn't been the productive 1st round talent wide receiver that I would have expected or wanted to get out of him. But he was a great guy to get my first season, a great guy to just, have in the wide receiver room. It's going to bring a good healthy snap count, solid PFF grades, just solid player. But like I said, right now he's If Jalen Coker would have had more snaps earlier in the season, and we'll see what it looks like at the end of the year. But he might take over JSN as my number two wide receiver, which is fine because that means I can just play JSN in the slot. And that's fine by me. Um, and then as you can see, this is kind of organized by snap count. I have the higher snap counts positioned higher on the depth chart just for now. It's the best way to do it when you have a lot of guys that just aren't playing. So as we get along, I'm sure I can start moving these guys around. I can get guys that fit certain positional molds. But again, for now, I'm just filling out my team, and it's all about snap counts right now, early on in these guys' careers. But on that note, Troy Franklin does have just a few more snaps than Jalen Coker. I don't expect that to survive Week 10. I do think Jalen Coker is going to get some more run this week. I think he's been getting a lot of run, at least 20-ish snaps per game lately. So I'm getting games a lot higher than that, honestly. So I expect Coker to jump him on the depth chart here after Week 10. But for now, Troy Franklin is my wide receiver 3. He's in Denver with Bo Nix, a quarterback that I was eyeing last year in the draft that I would have loved to have on my team. I was a big fan of Bo Nix coming out. I think he's doing great things in the league right now. Even though I know he was off to a rocky start, but he's just a rookie. So I do think he projects well. I think he's going to have a great career. I'm glad to have Troy Franklin, his college teammate. Hopefully he can find a bigger role. I took him in the second round, had him really high on my board, loved him coming out, loved his tape. Just hasn't really panned out yet, trying to work in a tough system down there in Denver. He's currently my wide receiver 3. I've talked a lot about Jalen Coker for the Panthers UDFA selection in this previous draft, which now I'm looking at. I got 4 receivers in this draft. So I got Malik Nabers in the first round, Troy Franklin in the second round, Brendan Rice in the 7th round, and then Jalen Coker as the UDFA. So really, really loaded up that wide receiver room. And it seems to be working out. I mean, Nabers has been a beast. Coker looks like he's panning out well already. Then Brendan Rice, kind of round 7 pick, wasn't hoping for too much. Just wanted the upside, especially like they ended up on the Chargers. That worked out nicely. We'll see what happens to Troy Franklin. Feels like I kind of overinvested in him, but hopefully he pans out down the road along with Bo Nix. But yeah, that's the wide receiver room. Again, I'm expecting kind of Malik Nabers to take over that wide receiver 1 spot. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year, Jalen Coker takes over as wide receiver 2, leaving Jackson Smith-Njigba as my, slot receiver, third receiver type guy. But onto the tight end room. I actually loved 2 tight ends in the 2023 draft that I really wanted to grab, and it was Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. And Luke Musgrave got picked right before one of my selections in that draft class, and I was really bummed out. But I was able to grab a Tucker Kraft, and funny enough, they both ended up on the Packers. And then even funnier enough, Tucker Kraft seems to have really taken over the tight end 1 role for the Green Bay Packers over Luke Musgrave. So I ended up winning that. It was all meant to be. I wasn't able to grab my Luke Musgrave, but Tucker Kraft ended up being the better player, at least in that system. So that's worked out for me. He's not putting up crazy numbers. He's kind of an average player, but that's kind of all you really need out of a tight end. I'm not looking to be a tight end heavy team, but I'm glad I got a guy that blocks and is a great receiver at times, solid receiver, again, solid football player. That was a great 3rd round selection in my opinion. And then I grabbed Zach Kuntz as well later last year. I just, kind of love the upside with his profile. I thought he was a little leaner frame. Would have liked him to have a little more weight on him. Was worried about him staying healthy, but he hasn't really been able to carve out a role with the Jets, which, their team's just in disarray. So I'm interested to see if he's able to find his way onto a different roster and maybe make some things happen with his crazy athletic profile. And then I also picked up Donald Holker. He was a guy I liked a lot in last year's draft class. I was amazed that he made it to, he went undrafted. I'm excited to have him as part of the squad. We'll see again if he can carve out a role on the Saints. He hasn't been getting a ton of run, as you can see, only 13 snaps. So really cross my fingers on that one. It'd be great to have, a kind of a dual tight end room that I can have both guys, interchanging weeks of who's the better player. But right now, Tucker Kraft's doing really all I need him to do, especially this early on in his career, only year 2 of his career. So now, my offensive line room has been a project. I got a lot of guys in there, and I think it projects better down the road. I know in the NFL, it's more of a 3-year process to get a guy from being a rookie to kind of being who he's going to be in the NFL. So I didn't expect a lot of these guys to pan out super early, but it would have been, it would have made me feel better if they looked good earlier on in their careers. We're getting better run in the regular season. Chandler Zavala is a guy that I kind of got baited into by the draft community. Everyone got really, really high on him late in the process in 2023, which I just jumped him on my board. I kind of bought into the hype. I was there for it. He just hasn't panned out. Hasn't really been able to stay healthy. And then when he's in, he isn't playing great. The Panthers actually brought in 2 free agents to replace both of their guard spots, which has not panned out well for Zavala. Jalen Duncan on the Titans was a guy that I liked his athletic ability and his upside on film, but just hasn't panned out in the NFL. Again, barely having a really hard time finding the field in Tennessee. Hopefully, maybe Bill Callahan can turn it around. One of the best offensive line coaches in the league. Would love to see him get his hands on Jalen Duncan and turn him into what I saw him as he was coming out. But again, 7th round pick. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Bo Limmer out of 2024. I actually really liked his film. I didn't watch his film or really get into his profile until I was down in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. And I knew he was down there. He was going to be participating, so I wanted to make sure I was, caught up on who he was, what his profile looked like. So I really binged the film when I first got down there. Watched a lot of Bo Limmer. Really liked what I saw in his film. And then as I watched him go through, whether it was practice or even the scrimmages of the game on Saturday, like I was really just impressed with what he did, and I was hoping to get him as a late round gem, and I was able to in the 6th round. And then just through injuries and quality of play issues in Los Angeles for the Rams, Bo Limmer's found his way to becoming a starting center there. So as you can see, his snap count's a little lower than it probably should be as a full year starter, but I do expect by the end of the year, he'll have, the snap count we need him to have to qualify for, a tier ranking. And he's been playing all right, especially for an undersized rookie. I'm okay with a 56 PFF grade. I do expect that to go up a little bit. I just hope he can, retain that job and be the starting center coming into 2025. Luke Whippler is a guy where the Browns really had an established offensive line, and I was really bummed out to see him end up on the Browns, just like Javion Cohen. I thought they were both really good ball players that could carve out earlier playing time than some of these other guys in the NFL and in the right situation. But they ended up on a Browns team that already had a lot of established players that were pretty solid players. So I do think both of those picks are going to be more of a long-term plan. They might pan out later down the road, hopefully by the end of their rookie contracts. But I still have faith. He's not getting any snaps right now, but I have faith, especially in Luke Whippler. I think he's going to get there. He seems to be kind of the 7th-ish man there. I expect him to get some reps as they turn over this Cleveland Browns offensive line. Warren McClendon got some run, got a lot of run in a couple games. Just again, I feel like he's right now kind of that 6th man for the Los Angeles Rams coming off the bench. It just hasn't been able to carve out a role. I thought he looked pretty good in a couple of his games, and he has a couple of games that he goes out there and really does not perform well. So I think just the inconsistency in his game right now is what's holding him off the field. But hopefully, as he gets into his career and starts figuring things out, he can settle in and really carve out a nice role there. I'd love to see him, if we can get like a line with, Warren McClendon, Bo Limmer, Steve Avila. I feel like that'd be a really good group personally. Frank Crum, UDFA from this last draft cycle. I just loved his profile. I loved out of Wyoming, big old body, moves really well. I just loved his upside. I was really hoping that he would go undrafted so I could grab him. I didn't really want to spend a draft pick on him, but I also knew he was kind of under the radar. I loved his combine performance. Again, just love his measurables. Really just kind of one of these high upside. I like the profile, I like the frame, I like the athleticism. Let's see if we can, let you pan out in the NFL. Let's see what happens with you. I just took a shot on him as a UDFA. It's what those spots are for. And I'm glad that he landed on the Broncos. I think he's got the opportunity there to work his way into a spot over the next couple of years. I think he could. I really do think he can pan out. Again, UDFA. If he doesn't, he doesn't. But I like his profile. Glad to have him on the squad. Christian Mahogany for the Lions. Just dealing with injuries as a rookie. I thought he was really highly touted. I was amazed I was able to get him in the 6th round out of Boston College. He's a very physical player, strong player. I think he really fits that Lions mindset perfectly. Unfortunately for my shadow team, he is on the Lions, so who's to say when he's going to be able to really actually get any reps with that squad or earn a starting role on that squad? But only a rookie, so we're gonna have optimism still. We're not going to look to cut anybody. Don't need to yet, but yeah, it's just one of those things where you're going to draft this guy, and then he ends up in a situation where it's like, oh, you're kind of a long-term depth piece for them. So hopefully, as time goes on, and some of those guys might age out or get traded, whatever might happen in Detroit, he can find a role there. Loved his profile. I was amazed that I got him in the 6th round. Talked about Javion Cohen a little bit, and Emil Ekiyor Jr. was my first. The first guy that I was like, oh wow, this guy's going to be a miss. Luckily, it was the undrafted free agent. You're not going to hit on all of those guys. He went undrafted for a reason. Just was never able to carve out a role of any kind or even make a 53-man roster in the NFL. So he's currently a free agent. I don't expect him to make a roster. Just didn't end up looking good in preseason reps. Wasn't able to, again, make a 53-man roster. Just struggled, and seems like he just won't make it. I'd love for him to get picked up for selfish purposes and for his career, but just doesn't seem like he's gonna pan out, and that's gonna happen with some of your undrafted free agents. That's okay. I'm okay missing on one. We'll get to another one here in a minute. To the defensive side of the ball, Tuli Tuipulotu was one of my best. I think he was my best performer in 2023. 2nd round pick, defensive end for the Chargers. Got a lot of run. Ended up being a starter for the Chargers last season. He's kind of had some up and down rep counts this year, but I think he can still be considered a starter. He has enough snaps to qualify to be a starter for my team. I really love that pick. Feel really good about that pick. 2nd round pick. You want to hope those pan out, and getting an above average player in his rookie year, that feels good. That's a good hit. Adetomiwa Adebawore for the Indianapolis Colts. He's actually looked pretty solid in the reps he's been able to get. Didn't get a lot of reps last year. Isn't really getting a lot of reps this year, but only when he gets in there, it's like he feels like kind of a game plan specific player. They don't like using him every week. There's some weeks where he'll get 0 reps, and there's other weeks where he can get up into the teens. And there's been a couple games, I believe, even this season, where he's gotten like that 19 right under the benchmark for qualifying reps. So I have faith that he's going to work out. This is only his 2nd year in the league, and like I said, he's kind of been flirting with that rotational level. Actually, not even rotational because he's an interior guy. So he's been flirting with starter quality rep counts. I think we just kind of got to work him in there, but I have faith that one's going to work out. And he looks solid. 59.3 PFF grade on his 127 snaps is not bad. Evan Anderson has been one of my favorite guys on my team. He was a UDFA in the real world, but I drafted him in the 7th round. He's a rookie, not limited information. Let's just get that corrected real quick. Yeah, I mean, every time he's on the field, it looks like he's performing well. He actually got signed to the 53-man roster, like I said earlier. I do expect him to find a role on this 49ers team. It feels like they are kind of leaning him that way too. Just a rookie, so I'm excited to see what happens for him next year. But that one feels like a good early, a good signs early on for a 7th round pick UDFA guy on my shadow team. So that, again, high hopes for that one. Then I talked about Austin Booker, 4th round rookie this year for the Bears. Didn't get a lot of run early on. I know he was struggling he had some health issues as well, injury wise. But as of late, he's really been ramping up, getting a lot more run, getting a lot heavier snap counts, and starting to get more involved in that defense. And so hopefully that PFF grade can bump up a little bit, but just shy of a 60 for a rookie that kind of got started later in the year. Totally fine with that. I just want to get that rep count up so we can count him for next year as a starter. But he's looked pretty good out there on the field so far. Jalen Redmond is another guy, low rep count guy, but looks good when he's out on the field. Has a lot of good reps. I was really worried about him making the roster this year after what he did last year. Sorry, I'm realizing I have all these issues. There's another one. Yeah. Amateur hour over here, making these mistakes. But yeah, anyway, so I have a lot of Vikings players, which is a good and a bad thing. It means I think like the Vikings, but also means all these guys aren't going to be able to get reps at the same time. And he's just a guy on a loaded defense. It's hard to win snaps on. He's not going to get a lot of run that often on this loaded defense. But as they start moving on from some of these players, I do expect him to kind of fill in. I think he's looked a lot better this year than he did last year. Adisa Isaac for the Ravens hasn't really gotten any run this year, which is kind of a letdown for a third round pick for me. I would have liked to see him get more involved. I think he can really be a force, especially in Baltimore. So hopefully he finds a way to make an impact, whether it's later in this year, if injuries, if injuries come across that defensive line, and if not, hopefully it's next year he's able to carve out a role, whether it's a rotational role or even a starting level role in that really impressive Ravens defensive front seven. Really love his upside. Love him as a player and solid PFF grade, even though it's only 14 snaps. Gabe Murphy, guy I was also pretty high on as a rusher. Loved his bendiness, loved his athletic ability. Lower round pick. Didn't expect a lot from him early. Also landed on the Vikings. We'll see what happens with him. I don't really know what to think of him yet. I'm still going to keep my eye on him. He's a rookie that didn't get a lot of run in the regular, hasn't gotten a lot of run in the regular season. Didn't hear a ton about in the preseason. So we'll see what it looks like, come training camp next year. Andre Carter, the second, another UDFA guy, also went to the Vikings. Big fan of Andre Carter. I think he's just kind of a weird player as far as he's kind of a hybrid player. He's a tweener, can play edge, can play linebacker. I just think it's kind of hard to find a way to fit him onto the field. If anyone's going to do it, though, it's going to be the Vikings. I wish they would give him some more run. I think he could perform well if he was out there. But again, tough defense to earn a spot on. And then another Viking, 6th round pick for me, undrafted free agent in the real world, Ivan Pace Jr. Again, one of my better players, an above average player last year as a rookie. Had some injury issues this year. But when he's been on the field, he's still been performing kind of at that 60 level. It's back down to average at that point, but that's totally fine. And out of a second-year guy, especially a late-round pick, he's kind of been my staple linebacker. Just big fan. Ivan Pace and Tuli Tuipulotu really carried my defense last year. But I had to go get a guy to pair with him. I got Peyton Wilson this year for the Steelers. Well, he got picked up by the Steelers. And he's performed well. He didn't really earn a starting role or kind of that level of snap count until partway through the first half of the season. But ever since then, he's been playing at a really solid level, as you can see by his, almost 63 PFF grade. He's been playing very well. I'm excited to see him really, become a staple in that linebacking core on a really good defense. Really good to see the rookie go earn some really good snaps on a defense that's playing at the level that they are right now. Yet another Viking, undrafted free agent, Dallas Gant, linebacker. Liked his athleticism on tape. Loved his production profile coming out of college. Knew he'd kind of be a UDFA, so I let him slide a little bit, but I'm really glad to have him on the squad. Again, really hard to have this many Vikings, especially with their defense and how they run everything and how hybrid it can be. It's tough. Some of these guys, I don't know if they're going to be able to find the field. I'd love to see them land somewhere else where they can. But I'd also love kind of over the years, if I just keep accumulating Vikings players, then maybe I'll have the entire Vikings starting defense, and that'll be okay by me. Because they're doing a lot of great things up there in Minnesota. And then finally, Cam Jones is another UDFA. I liked his profile, but again, I kind of more of an upside swing. I saw what he could be, but didn't love kind of the floor of him coming out of college. Great that he's on the Chiefs. Hasn't been getting any run. Looked really good in the preseason. That's one that you just kind of have to wait on. It's his second year in the league, just doesn't really have a lot of room to go earn a job there in Kansas City right now. So just kind of sitting on that one. I don't expect him to stay there for long, to be honest. I think a lot of teams, if he gets on the field, they're going to really like what he's able to put on tape. To the defensive back room, I spent 2 early picks this year and an early pick last year on DBs. I just like these guys. I like these, athletic, long, just high-level physical corners, DBs out there. I thought Cooper DeJean would be a great piece just to have on my team, being kind of the flex player that he was coming out of college and kind of the do-it-all guy. Quinyon Mitchell was one of my favorite prospects this last draft, and that's why I got them in the first and second rounds. And they've obviously been instant impact guys. Cooper DeJean didn't get a lot of run early on, but has slowly been ramping up as far as snap count goes. But as you can see, he's performed well when he's been out there with 83 PFF grade. I just really hope he's able to get that snap count high enough where he can make that grade stick for his rookie year performance. Quinyon Mitchell has been underperforming my expectations, but a 68.5 as a rookie, especially on this Eagles team like this, that they play a lot of tough competition, and he's been performing well. I'm excited to see what he's able to do over the long term. I feel like I really got another solid staple piece with first round pick there. Then Cam Smith took in the second round. Loved Cam Smith, one of my favorite corners in the 2023 class. Just has not been able to find the field in Miami. I don't know what it is. I know they have a lot of good defensive backs down there, and I think it really is just a volume issue again, where he just got selected by a team where it's just hard to work his way up into a starting role. But I do think he's going to find a place. He's been getting more snaps lately. Doesn't have great grades, so maybe this is going to be one of my first busts. I don't want to call him that in the second season, where I hope it pans out for him. And I think it will. I think, the way that team's going, they might be, seeing some turnover here in the next year or two. And I hope he is able to be retained and find a role in that team. Dwight McGlothern, I 3 UDFAs, 3 more UDFAs in my cornerback room. This is where early on you're really going to build your team through those, because you get the 14 draft picks, but you're going to get 8 UDFAs a year. That's a significant volume on your team. So I have 16 undrafted free agents on my team out of 44 guys. That's and they all seem clumped together. But it's just because there's certain positions that I like taking swings on, especially with these undrafted guys, where it's like, hey, I just like his upside. Let's take a shot on that guy and see if he can land somewhere. But yeah, so I have Dwight McGlothern for the Vikings, of course, because why wouldn't I have another Vikings player? But he's a rookie. I don't know how this ended up getting this messed up. Boop. Yeah, I really like his upside. Again, just a hard room to earn a spot in. I don't think I need to go more onto that. I've talked about it with a bunch of different players right now, especially on this Vikings team. We're just going to hope that he's able to be retained and be able to stay on a roster, and then over time is able to earn that starting role or a rotational role. Eli Ricks is a guy for the Eagles that I've seen kind of get some spot run near the end of last season. He started getting some more volume near the end of the year, but just hasn't seen it this year, but looked pretty solid in the preseason again. Made it to the 53 again. Just kind of, again, waiting for some of these guys to shuffle out. As you can see, I love the same defensive backs as the Eagles do, with 4 of my 6 DBs being Eagles, which is tough, especially with all the same position, because you're not going to necessarily play 4 corners. So that's a tough look. And then Mekhi Garner also was an Eagle. I believe he's a free agent right now. I believe they waived him. Not looking great for his future as far as being in the league, being waived and not really getting picked up. So we'll see how that one pans out. Another UDFA. Sometimes you're just going to not necessarily miss on that guy, I don't want to say, but those guys aren't necessarily going to pan out over the long term. Antonio Johnson for the Jaguars. It's so weird because he'll get a lot of run in certain games, and that could be due to injury or what have you, and he might have some solid reps or a solid game here and there, but then he just has some really poor games, and that's why you see that 44.3 PFF grade. He has some really good games, but then just some really bad, snaps in some of his shorter volume games that's going to hold that grade down. But I do think he's going to pan out, 5th round guy for me. I've liked what I've seen from him in game. Just need to get him some more run, but you can see he's got 448 snaps. Got a lot of run there for a little bit. It seems like he's kind of lost that job again. So he's just kind of battling for that spot still, but he's a solid player. Hoping he works out, but I do like the other 2 guys a little bit better. I'm not going to lie. Brandon Joseph for the Lions has looked good when he's gotten run. It's really his limited snap games that hold his PFF grade down, if I recall correctly. But he's been able to he seems like he's kind of the 3rd safety in the room right now. He's getting popped in there whenever a guy goes down or Brian Branch gets ejected. He's the first guy that goes in there, and I think he looks pretty solid out there, especially for a second-year guy. So I'm excited to see him pan out. And then Jaden Hicks is a guy that I don't understand why he's not getting more reps. He had an awesome preseason. You can see his 83.1 grade. He might only have 38 snaps, but when he goes in there, he looks really good for the Chiefs. So I'm excited to see him work his way into a starting role. I do feel like he's going to be a 4th rounder that's able to find a starting role in the NFL somewhere. But feel really good about my safety room. As far as my defense goes overall, Like I said, I love Quinyon Mitchell, love Cooper DeJean. I don't know how I feel about Cam Smith quite yet, but I do think Dwight McGlothern is going to end up panning out over the long haul. Feel pretty good about my safety room. Not necessarily feel like I have to add a guy in that room right now. I think Jaden Hicks and Brandon Joseph are going to work out over the long term for me personally. I'm looking to really capitalize on some of the defensive line talent in this upcoming draft class. As you can see, I don't really have guys getting a ton of reps. We're going to need some more production out of these guys over, we're 9 games in at this point. Some of them, I guess, are 8 games, but I just need some more value there because that's just a really high value position, especially in our league. And if I'm trying to score points, trying to win games here, we gotta invest in the defensive line, I believe, this year. Then finally, I did take a punter UDFA last year, Austin McNamara. I thought his college production, his numbers looked really great, but he went to the Bengals, got beat up by Ryan Rico, which just worked out great for the Bengals, and that worked out great for my shadow team. So that's the roster. And again, as far as defense goes, I'm kind of looking maybe grab another corner or two this year, really turn over this defensive line room. And then offensively, the hunt for the quarterback still continues. I'm eyeing a second running back. I'm not going to lie. I know Bijan's a guy, he can be the bell cow, but I'm eyeing a second running back for sure. This wide receiver room has actually worked out really nicely. I know I have 2 first rounders and a second rounder in there, but that second rounder has not been looking great. However, I have a UDFA guy that's really stepped up. And so in my brain, I feel like I can just flip those picks and I can feel a lot better about it as of right now. But that wide receiver room has actually been working out really well. So I have solid running back, really solid wide receiver room, it feels like, especially this early on in my team building process. I have a tight end that feels really like can be a key contributor for a long time, especially in Green Bay. I know they like using their tight ends a lot, especially with a younger quarterback in Jordan Love, a younger experience-wise, I should say. But solid guy in Tucker Kraft. Down Holger, hoping pans out. Need a lot of offensive line help, though. So we're looking, this draft, I'm kind of focusing on quarterback, offensive line, defensive line, probably bolster the defensive back room. I feel like Ivan Pace and Peyton Wilson are going to turn out to be starting linebackers. So I'm not necessarily worried about linebacker right now. It's really just kind of those 3. There's a couple tight ends I think are going to be later round guys, whether it's 3rd, 4th rounds, fringe day 2 guys. I can probably get in my tight end room. So maybe I can get a running mate at running back and one at tight end, and we can flirt with some, 12 and 21 personnel, see how that goes. But yeah, overall, that's my team. That's where we're at right now. Thanks for sticking around as I kind of went through the midseason recap of my team and kind of just the intro to how to build your own shadow team. So again, there's going to be a link in the description of this video. Feel free to go to that, copy it out, start building your own team this April. Get started with your scouting, early in the year, like I do. I love shadow teams because it's a year-round project for me, and it's just a way that I can not only have a purpose to scout, a quote-unquote purpose for building my own team and trying to find these guys that I can really flesh out a solid team with, but it's a good way to follow up with these guys and keep track of their careers. And so, but here's a reminder of the rules as far as it goes, setting up your team initially. Again, there's a lot that can go into this, especially once you get into the later seasons. But I kind of want to bring you on this journey with me and make decisions as I make decisions and kind of see my thought process and why I do things the way I do. So obviously in future videos, we can get into some of these other issues, you can call them, or other parts of what a shadow team is and can be. But for now, get out there, make your team. 14 picks in the draft your first 4 years, 8 UDFAs. Go build that team. That's 22 players a year. Next year, getting a little nervous. I think I'm going to be just shy of having to make a cut next year if I did my math correctly. But we'll see. But I do believe because I'll have 66 players and I'm going to have a 53-man roster. But that includes 3 specialists. So I'm going to have to take 3 of those guys off, and then I'm planning on having, I believe, a 16-man practice squad. I'll look into that a little bit more as we get closer. But roughly 12 to 16-man practice squad, and then anything over that I have to cut. And once you cut a player, the way I'm doing my team, once they're cut, they're gone. You don't get to pick that guy back up. He's not just a free agent for you to go, if he works out, go pick him back up. Once you cut him, he's gone. You have to make that decision, and it is final. But yeah, super excited for you guys to come on this journey with me. And I hope you guys share your shadow teams with me. I'd love to follow along with you guys or even get you involved in our league. So Thanks again for watching. This has been the first episode of Coach Blake's Breakdown. We made it. Again, link in the description for this template. Feel free to like the video. I greatly appreciate that. Get this thing rolling. But I'll see you all in the next one.